Let's see what Jeffries is saying.
Donald Trump and his actions, which do not appear to be consistent with the United States Constitution, takes unilateral offensive military action without seeking the approval of the United States Congress. The use of military force, which is offensive in nature, must be approved by the House and the Senate. That's according to the Constitution. It's not optional, Donald. It's not. The framers of the Constitution actually gave Congress the power to declare war for a reason.
I'm losing my mind because if you don't talk about the real issue here, this is just seasoning. This is a problem, not the problem. The problem is allowing Israel to run its dick all over every orifice of American foreign policy. The problem is going to war with Iran at the behest of Israel. A problem in the process is doing it unconstitutionally. It's so strange that these guys think that there is an unlimited amount of resentment that they could tap into right now. An impossible to defend decision made by the Trump administration. And these dipshits are basically taking the dumbest, most like rule-abiding aspect of this process. They're mad about the process in which these strikes were conducted, while simultaneously giving credit to why those strikes should have been conducted to begin with by saying Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. If you say that, then you don't understand why people voted for Trump to begin with. Nobody gives a fuck about the process. People care about going to war with Iran and potential retaliation from Iran. They don't care that it was done unilaterally. I mean, I'm sure people care about that it was done unilaterally as well, but like that's not the main concern here. Trump does everything unilaterally. He doesn't give a shit. Even things that he could get across through congressional approval, he still does on his own to prove a point. I'm not saying you shouldn't bring up the unconstitutionality of this. That is definitely an important point to bring up, but you shouldn't only focus on that while simultaneously offering credit to why these campaigns must happen by taking Trump's framing and running with it. The framing that even our intelligence communities did not agree with in their initial assessments. But of course, Hakeem Jeffries is saying this because he is also bought and paid for by AIPAC. Democrats have a unique opportunity to present themselves as anti-war for once. They have a unique opportunity to also take away some of the people in Trump's base that are maybe in the margins that thought that they were voting for an anti-war candidate that clearly is not invested in anti-war at all. But instead of taking advantage of this opportunity, even with a cold, calculated, cynical approach, they can't let go of their other ambition, which is to, one, defend Israel's interests at all costs, and two, at the behest of defending Israel's interests at all costs, bomb Iran.
So the American people, through their elected representatives, would have the opportunity to debate the issue and make some decisions as it relates to what's in the best interest and the national security of the American people. Donald Trump and the administration chose to ignore the Constitution. And so they're going to have to come before Congress and explain their justification for an offensive military strike against Iran.
It is mind-boggling how bad this response is, because it's such a gimme. This is as big as a gimme as being like, I want a ceasefire in Gaza. Just saying those words. And I'm willing to stop Israel from getting weapons to get this ceasefire in Gaza. And the Democrats couldn't be bothered to make that simple statement. I cannot understand how insane they are. And I also especially do not understand why so many Democrats, like visible Democrats on Twitter, Democratic Party supporters rather, are going along with this like false narrative. They're fantasizing about like Kamala Harris being a great peacekeeper somehow. It is obvious to me that Democrats do not want to be anti-war at a time when there is tremendous resentment against war, even by Trump's own base.
A good article about this because they're talking about making a comparison to Reagan's invasion of Grenada well before you were born. Reagan's invasion of Grenada, and it was not sanctioned. It was quick, very few casualties, if any, and didn't cost much. this will cost a tremendous amount of money. And are we thinking that Congress is actually going to engage in an appropriation to make this happen?
I think you bring up such an important point that I just want to add to real quickly, which is Democrats right now can literally put aside what they feel about Iran and whether Iran, and no one is here justifying or defending Iran's actions, but they can at least stand up for the rule of law in this country and say the president cannot start a war without the approval of Congress, and laser focus the conversation on saying do not start a war without the approval of Congress. And yet they seem to have completely abandoned that principle and say, well, he should.
All of Congress has abandoned that principle for decades.
Right, but we're talking about the politics of what the Democratic leadership should be doing instead of Americans looking at Tucker Carlson skewering Ted Cruz or Steve Bannon and saying, wow, I can't believe these are the people who are saying, hey, let's have a minute, let's have this conversation. That should be coming out of the senior leadership of the Democratic Party, front and center, say,
Hey, I can't say this about Steve Bannon, but Tucker Carlson isn't just talking about congressional approval for war. If you think that the reason why he's gaining tremendous popularity off of this is simply because he just wants the normal process to take place, you've missed it. You've missed the actual point that he's making, which is, why are we going to war with Iran at all? What are you saying? Why are we getting dog walked by our special client state? That's the reason why people love the Tucker Carlson interview. Because these are the kinds of conversations that never take place, even in the media, and certainly don't take place, at least in public, with political figures. This is why Hakeem Jeffries calls Iran a sworn enemy. And he says Israel has a right to defend itself from Iranian aggression. And even though Israel attacked them first, he's a bought and paid for hack. It's true. What's wrong with Iran's actions? They're defending themselves against a genocidal state? No, 100%. I think it's cowardly for American politicians to not be like, dude, what are we talking about? Israel is a foreign state that struck another foreign state, a massive foreign nation state. What do you mean? Like they just have to eat it? Like, what are you talking about? That's not how that works. Israel did a genocide after its own captive population that it is a belligerent occupier of had a prison rebellion after 75 years at the time of ruthless oppression. Why would you expect any country to not respond or retaliate when met with so much military force? What good are nation states if it's not to protect its own citizens, protect its own way of existence? That's the whole purpose.
We can talk about Iran, but this president cannot drop a 30,000-pound bomb on a country, lead us into a war, drag the entire region into it without the approval of the American Congress.
And it's message discipline. No kings, right?
Yeah.
No kings. Can't do this without us. You need Congress.
I like no oligarchs more than I like no kings. I think the Democratic Party keeps getting served issues we can win on a silver platter and just kind of turning them away. If we were staunchly anti-war, boom, skyrocketing popularity. If we really, really took it to the oligarchy, skyrocketing popularity.
But the problem is they're not anti-war and they're not anti-oligarchy, and that's the problem that we have with the Democratic Party.
And then they're like, why won't your generation vote for us? Well,
Bernie had thousands of people in deep red South Texas at a rally last night, though.
Okay, Cam, friend of the show, Cameron Kasky, who also has a show now with Tim Miller, who I don't really like too much, but it is what it is. At the Bulwark, Cameron on this panel is like the inverse of this meme. Okay, so there's a 56-year-old woman here. Oh, yeah, it's the opposite. Yeah.